Hello, this is Joe Nicasio, your business coach, employeeescapeplan.com, and Build a Better Business podcast. And today I'm sitting with Luke Benoit. And Luke is, let me give you a little intro and then we'll just jump right in.
Sure.
Luke is a client that I met who's an amazing coach, not officially a therapist, but healer. He's somebody that really does profound change work with people. And when I met him, he was running a coaching business, but not making quite so much money. And then I thought he hired me and we did some stuff and got his business to a new level. And recently, one of the things we really recognized is that I actually did a session with Luke, and it was profound because I had some stories inside of me that were not productive. And, those stories still exist, but they don't have the same energy they used to. They don't have the same pull over me. And so what I wanted to do is we coined a phrase that, Luke is the story healing coach. And so I thought today what would be really useful for because he's doing this amazing work, but, he's doing work that he loves, and he shares the love with the clients that he works with. And he receives the love by getting paid to do the work that he does. But, there's a lot of people that Luke knows, and there's a lot of people that know Luke, but there's a lot more people that don't know Luke. And today, what this is about, this is an opportunity for you to learn more about Luke. So this is a conversation. I'm going to ask some questions. Luke's going to have some answers, and we'll just take it from there. So, Luke, welcome, first of all. And thank you for taking the time to...
Always good to see you.
So, what is this thing called story healing? We all have stories, and some of them are powerful stories that are empowering, and there's some that are disempowering. Talk a little bit about what is story healing and what got you started down this path.
Well, if you look at other work that I've done, especially at the Pac-Man theory talk that I give a lot, we understand that people have old ideas, old stories, old negative beliefs that they picked up somewhere along the way, that those old stories are very new in the fact that they're still carrying them around and influencing their lives and creating beliefs about who they are and what's possible for them. And when we go into the story healing process, we're about identifying that story, retelling and reprocessing that story, and helping the person transform and transcend by creating a new story that can carry them forward into the future.
First of all, what are some of the ways that people tell stories? They don't just tell them to other people, they tell them to themselves, right?
People have words going on in their head all the time. And some people also have pictures going on in their head all the time. People have worries that are repeating over and over again. And
I wish this didn't keep happening.
Yes.
I wish this didn't keep happening.
Today when I go to work, such and such is going to happen, and am I going to be able to handle it? And, why doesn't anybody love me? Why can't I meet someone who's really terrific? Why can't anybody love me back? These are all stories that people
Why do they keep doing this to me?
Exactly. Why is it always me? Why can't I be the lucky one?
Okay, so we all have little dialogues going in our head.
Yes.
And how does that affect us, and how does it affect the people around us?
Well, it affects us profoundly. What we think and what we feel manifests in our lives and in our worlds and the stories that we're in fact living out right now. The law of attraction teaches us that this is very much true. So what's going on in my head, what's going on inside of me in terms of how I feel, which all is fueled by the stories that we're telling ourselves, have a huge impact on how we live on a daily basis.
Now how does that, those stories directly impact us, and then how does it impact the people around us?
Well, how we are influences how other people react to us and how they treat us. very often we're not giving somebody an opportunity to show up for us in whatever capacity that might be, because of our own insecurities, because of our own anxieties and fears.
So you're saying blessings could be coming our way, but we have these stories and it actually
Turns them away.
turns them away. Wow, that's powerful stuff.
Yeah.
So so you have this thing where people have disempowering stories. It affects them and it affects the way they show up, and that affects how their whole energy vibe affects everyone and how they respond to everybody. What's the promise? What can you promise somebody that goes through the story healing process? What kind of promises can you make that are real? I don't want you to give me any kind of like hypey bullshit answer. I mean, what is the true promise? Not too much, not too little. What's the most accurate promise you can make about the story healing
I
process?
think the true big promise is that your life can change if you do this work. And it will change because you address the story, destroy the pieces that are not feeding you, that are not fueling your best life, and create a new story with new pieces that are going to bring you where you want to go.
That's powerful. Now, I remember when I did my session with you, one of the first things you used, and the language that comes to me is, there's a book called Therapeutic Metaphor. You used a therapeutic metaphor with me. And it had something to do with a tree and my stories and my beliefs around that. And then the tree got like infested and got like ripped out from the roots. Could you actually explain, could you actually go through that right now and have people kind of visualize that tree as an example?
Well, this is something that I learned along the way, and it's a kind of classical metaphor. What we'll say to somebody is, could you close your eyes and picture an old tree, an old, nasty, diseased tree that has been on this planet too long. Its time has come. And see that on one of the branches of this tree, there's a sign hanging there, and that sign has your problem laid out right on it.
Mm-hmm.
And as we rip the old tree out of the ground, destroying the roots, understanding it's never going to take in nutrients again, it's never going to take in water again, and the old tree crashes onto the ground. We ask the person at this point, what's going to happen to this tree? And they generally say something like, it's going to die. And that's kind of a preparation for the work that we're going to do.
That is powerful stuff. When I was going through that with you, gosh, it only took about 1 or 2 minutes to go through that process. And I just immediately felt like, okay, he's just, like all these stories that I had, it's like there was a shift and a change inside of me, like as this tree is ripped out and dying, it's like these stories are dying at the same time. It's a very powerful process, and I know in your bag of tricks you got a bunch of those kind of tools.
Yeah, we have a lot of stuff. That's so powerful because it's NLP and is dealing with the subconscious mind and the old pieces, the old stories that are stuck in there. When we can get in there and move those and shift those and allow the brain to literally go to work on itself and rewrite those pieces, rewrite those stories, everything changes.
So Luke, the story healing process, I know it's like transformationally powerful work. And people come to you with disempowering stories, and there's a lot of frustrations and negative emotions around how they come in with their disempowered story. And then you do this work and they walk out with a new story that's a lot more empowering. It moves, they have a more empowered story when they're through. Talk a little bit about the transformation process of how somebody comes to you and how they're different when they leave.
Well, people come and they have problems that are bothering them in the moment, in the present. And we need to work on those. We need to hear what the story is that's going on in their life right now. Like, I can't take it at work. I'm so anxious. I'm so afraid I'm going to be fired. The people are so difficult to work with. I just don't know what to do. If I lose this job, I won't be able to get another job. A story like that. We need to look at this present story, and we also need to look at the root stories that inform this story. So where did this person come from? What stories in their past are still very much alive in their present that are influencing what's going on right now? We have to neutralize those old pieces, get rid of them.
Got to neutralize the emotions with them too.
And definitely the emotions is a huge part of it. Then use tools for rewriting the subconscious mind, like tapping, NLP, hypnosis, regular coaching techniques.
Transformation. So people come to you, Luke, and they got a story. They have usually multiple stories, layered stories, right? And they're disempowering to them. And then they do work with you. Frequently, you work with people several sessions, 5 to 10 sessions at a time?
Usually 8.
8 sessions.
Sometimes people will want to do more work, and we'll do 16 or 20.
I've only done one session with you, and it was super powerful.
Yeah, they can be that way.
But there are other layers to stories and other stories to work on. So somebody comes to you, and they have a disempowering story. They come into your office, and they walk out transformed. Talk a little bit about that transformation that occurs.
Well, people come in with a present story that's bothering them. Like, I'm at work, I'm so anxious, I'm so worried about making mistakes, people don't like me, I'm afraid I could lose this job,
Well, I have to
need
deal with
this
the haters
job.
again.
That's right, exactly. And this is the kind of story that they're cooking up in front of them right now. Whenever there's a story with that much energy, we know that there are old stories that are still alive in this person that are informing the story that's going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And very often when we go back and neutralize those old stories, put the subconscious mind to work on itself and get those old stories rewritten, the person does become emotionally free. They become open and understanding the situation in a new way, and things can really start to change. It's actually a very practical process.
You just said something. It's like one of the buzzwords today is this idea of being present.
Yeah.
It's really important to be present. And what you're also saying, though, is as much as we're trying to be present with another human being, our old stories may be actually polluting the experience.
Yeah, we're often being very present to the story rather than present to the person that's sitting across from us.
So let me ask you, when you actually heal the story and then somebody now is trying to be present or being present, how are they connecting with other humans better when they're present with empowering stories or the ability to dissolve old stories versus being present with this baggage?
Well, big changes happen, and people end up becoming more relaxed, more confident, feeling safer in the world, less anxious, less plagued by the fears that they were having before, and more able to kind of step into their true selves, their real selves, so they can go ahead and have the lives they really want.
So let's talk a little bit about, story healing isn't something you do randomly, it's a process, and you told me it's 3 parts of telling, transforming, and transcending. What is this story healing model? And I mean, it's very simple in those 3 things, but I'm sure it could go very wide and deep.
Yeah, I think it gets very deep when you get into the details of somebody's story.
So there's 3 parts.
The effects. The 3 parts are telling, basically telling or writing down the story for me, but also for yourself, so you can actually realize what this story is that is impacting you so much and impacting your life.
So Luke, part of the story healing process, step one is telling the story.
Yes.
And so first you have to verbalize it, but I think it also helps when you write it down. What's the difference between just listening to the story and writing it down and looking at what, that alone, that's like a first step towards the transformation process.
Yeah, it's very powerful to get it down on paper and to see it in black and white, because now it's something that has become externalized. It's an object, and there's a separation between you and that object. It's not a part of you.
You go from
or,
associated to dissociated.
yeah, or what feels like truth inside your head and those emotions in your body.
I know you're a big fan of Byron Katie as well as I am.
Yes.
And one of the things she talks about is like judge your neighbor, write it down. And this process of writing it down allows you to do a little inquiry, like is it true, and can you absolutely be certain that it's the truth?
Yes.
And so talk a little bit about how we have these stories in our head and we actually believe that they're true.
We don't realize that we believe that they're true, and we have no idea that sometimes they're completely untrue.
And so by writing it down, sometimes you can look at it and say, this isn't true at all.
Yeah, it gives you a perspective.
And that's
so
empowering.
So you can actually, what you're doing in this first phase of the telling process is helping us understand what the story is, and also really understanding what the story is that you're telling yourself that you probably are unaware of.
Wow, and just awareness is the first step towards like that raising of consciousness.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then the second part of the model, so the client is sitting there with you, they're telling the story, it's being written down, you're questioning the truth of it, and then step two of this process is transforming.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about how you can take a story and wrap it up like a pretzel and do all kinds of magical things with this. Talk a little bit about the transformation process of a story and how it comes to you, and you can like do like meaning reframes and things like that.
Well, the transformation really is all about tools, and what tools you're going to use as a coach to help somebody go into their pieces and take them apart. And very often this work that gets done isn't something that I make happen. It's something that converts within the mind of the client. We put their mind to work on this picture, this image, this problem, these words, this story, and it literally goes in and converts the story and shifts it and rewrites it and changes those images to more positive images and a more positive story.
So you're not just transforming the content of the story, but the process and the way that that story is being processed.
Yes, and the new story that the person is going to be telling themselves that they need to be, telling instead.
I want you to talk, a lot of people that want to do story healing, they want to do it themselves, and I think it's a little bit like performing brain surgery on yourself. But what's the difference between sitting down and you have this bad story and you sit down and you write a good story, but you don't use like the tapping and those other things? Talk a little bit about, you can't change a story if you don't change the embodiment of the story.
Well, I do think it's helpful to write down your story and write down the alternative story that's positive that you want instead. But if you don't go in and use these tools like EFT tapping and hypnosis and the regular coaching process and NLP, that subconscious work is not going to happen. You can't really do that on yourself. You have to work with somebody so that they can bring those tools to you and allow you to engage with them.
You have the old story, you change it to the new story, but there's something like almost hardwired in about the old story. When we tell the old story in a powerful way, what I get from you and the way that the story healing process, it actually is wired into our neurology. So it's not
Yes.
just verbal, it's neural. Talk
And
about
that's
that.
why we need the tools. That's why we need the tapping. That's why we need the hypnosis and the NLP. We need to get in there beyond logic, beyond cognitive understanding, to a very physical experience that's almost like having a very intense dream that essentially changes you beyond what we can logic out and think about and try to make happen by concentrating really hard and using our minds.
You know, two words that come, one thing that comes to my mind is like muscle memory.
Yes.
And like we are wired, we don't just have the story, but the story is wired in.
Yes.
So are you like rewiring? Are you?
That's exactly what it is. It is rewiring. It is literally having a movie in your head and having that movie shift and convert and change colors and change perspective and change narrative and all these different pieces shifting to create a new neurology inside.
So we tell the story, which isn't working for us, and then we do this transformation work to, you know, to break up the old story, if you will, to kind of like take the emotional power away from the original story, so that you
Yes.
can kind of neutralize. And then the third part of this story healing process is the transcending part. So talk a little bit about, okay, you've transformed the old story, you've created kind of somewhat a blank slate. How do you now, what's the third piece? We'll talk a little bit about the transcending and rising above the old story.
The transcending is really about anchoring the new story and reinforcing it, future pacing it so that it becomes ingrained and amplified again and amplified again. So it essentially is becoming the person's new reality beyond even just the story that they're telling themselves.
So you're rewriting you're empowering the new story.
Yes.
You're making that as a vision in the future. Is there a piece of this where you're also rewriting history? Rewriting personal history?
The history is going to be rewritten in the course of the transformation process, and we will pick up those shifts and reinforce them in the transformation process.
So now you've got a new story, you're boosting it, you're amplifying it, you're reinforcing it, you're anchoring it, you're visualizing it as this is the new story in the future. How are people ultimately changed by telling, transforming, and transcending? What kind of shifts do you see in the people that you've worked with?
They become new people. They become people living new lives and literally transcending the problems that they used to have, the self-images that they used to have and carry, and becoming free, creating the lives they really wanted instead. Finding the relationship that works, that's not destructive. Finding the work that's good for them, that's positive. Finding happiness. You know, I was thinking this morning about the work in The Happiness Advantage, which is just an incredible TED Talk. And the whole idea of that piece is that we think hard work precedes happiness, and that when we become wealthy, then we will be happy. But
Right.
what we find out is it's the opposite. When we're happy, then we will find the wealth that we're seeking.
That's right.
And it really doesn't work the other way. So rewriting that story to get me into that happiness story and that happiness state is crucial for the development of that future.
When we're
that I
walking
want.
through the world happy, we attract good stuff.
Yeah.
So somebody comes to you, they tell you their disempowered story, you take all the energy away from that, you neutralize it so that a new story can be created. You create a new story to help them transform. What is now possible that now that the old stories are not holding you back? What becomes possible now?
What becomes possible is you get what you really wanted instead of what you were stuck with before that you couldn't figure out how to get rid of. You get the relationship that works instead of the relationship that doesn't work, that cycles into another relationship that doesn't work, that cycles into another relationship that doesn't work. You get the work situation that feels right for you and feeds your soul instead of eroding you. You get to be who you wanted. You maybe even lose weight, get the body that you want. That's often part of all this as well.
A lot of our body shape has got to do with the stories that we've been telling ourselves about food
and our body
stuff.
images.
If somebody wanted, they're not quite ready to see yet, and they want to do a little bit of story healing on their own, what are some steps that they could take?
I would say the first thing is if you're wanting to do something on your own, sit down and write that story down. And you will find out there is a lot about what's going on inside you that you know that you haven't been paying attention to. A lot about your present, a lot about your past that's influencing your present and informing your present, and just getting all that out on paper, even just the negative story, is very, very powerful, because once you externalize it and it becomes an object, you realize, whoa, maybe I don't know what to do with this now, but that's not really me.
So Luke, most people like to think of themselves as honest, and then they write these stories down. So honesty isn't just about being honest with others, it's about being honest with yourself.
Yes.
Elaborate on that.
Well, you can only be as honest as you can be. And, I have to be able to get it by me first to be able to tell it to you.
Yeah.
A lot of times we're in denial and we're lying to ourselves and we don't realize it because of this old program that we're carrying, because of these old stories that we're carrying that are creating a present for us that's not clear and free.
The second part, if somebody wants to play with story healing on their own, would be to transform it. And that might be some of the hardest stuff for people to do on their own, but
Yeah.
but maybe there's an idea or two you could throw out for somebody.
Well, one thing I would do is sit with a trusted, wise person and share the story with them. Because as they receive the story, they're going to tell you with a fresh perspective about what's real and what's not real. And when you receive that feedback, that is going to create changes in you that are going to be very powerful as well.
Right. Also, I think when you write it down and you question the truth of it,
Yes.
You can ask yourself, is this always true 100% of the time? Like,
Yes.
I can't trust people. Okay.
Yes.
Well, is there one person you can trust some of the time at least? Are there situations when you can trust people? Because it's kind of a dismal place to just say, I can't trust every single person on the planet. But isn't it more empowering if you write, I trust people, or I can't trust people? Like, see where that breaks down and where that actually isn't true and where there are people that you can trust.
Very important.
Okay, so the third part here would be if you want to heal your own story, so you've told the story, you've transformed the story, and now you need to transcend. What are some steps people could take?
Well, the self piece that you can do around the transcendence is writing the new story that you want instead. Writing that down and going ahead and sharing that with somebody. That can lead you into goal setting. That can lead
Visualizing
you
it.
into visualizing it. figuring out what you want instead and believing in what's possible for
Boosting
you.
those emotions,
Right.
your thoughts.
And this is when we might use a vision board. We might use a vision board in the earlier stages too, but now a future vision board about where you want to go, very powerful tool.
And you know, a personal note for me is I know the power of prayer. If you want to create something new and you pray about it.
Well, spirituality is very much like Miracle Grow in a self-help process. You know, we could grow some grass without Miracle Grow, or we could grow some grass with Miracle Grow. Which one are you going to choose? Which one's going to
Might as
really
well
get
tap
you
into the miracle.
results? So, spirituality of all kinds is very powerful, and we're going to encourage people to bring that in. Of course, prayer, meditation, more meditation is always reinforced and encouraged as well.
I think of prayer as talking to God and meditation as listening for the answers. Maybe you could tell a quick story about, or a quick story or two of people that have gone through the story healing process and have changed.
Well, I have one friend who has terrible trouble with anxiety and fears and even some phobias that are not realistic. They're not rooted in reality, you know. And he does have a lot of work problems and a lot of trouble with relationships at work. And he gets very spun out around these issues and questions, and then he doesn't know what to do. We did this story healing process with him and on him, and the results were amazing. We found out that a lot of what was going on in the workplace had to do with old stuff, had to do with family of origin stories, had to do with bullying stories that he had lived through and he was carrying, all of which affected his self-image and his self-esteem and his confidence level. When we went into the process and used the tools and rewrote those stories and had his subconscious mind repackage them and reprocess them, what came out was a whole new story about what was possible for him, and a much more relaxed life, a much more happy life of freedom with options, and even much more comfort in that workplace as he became more detached and free.
So he was struggling at his workplace, and now the struggle's not there anymore.
Yes.
So we all have stories in our head. Some are empowering, a lot are disempowering, a lot are empowering. You know, I guess it's a different balance for each person. And we can make a choice to create a new story, or we can make a choice to stay kind of stuck in the old story.
Yeah, I can stay where I am, or I can do something different.
Now, a lot of times we stay in a story, even though there are bad things in that story, there's usually like a positive payback.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about how sometimes we get a payoff to a poor story.
Well, a lot of times we're not aware that that dynamic is going on, but it is keeping us in that place. So, again, about this guy with the work issues were keeping him in his apartment because he believed he needed that job, and that job was the only thing he could get. It wasn't real, but it was true for him, in quotes, true for him. And so, kind of like the devil you know is better than the devil you don't, we can sit still instead of moving forward because we are getting some positives out of the process.
Right. The devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. And so instead of going out and finding a job that's 10 times better.
Exactly.
The
Because I'm
payoff
afraid
is
and I don't believe in myself.
and this
it's
is
not
stable
possible.
and don't rock the boat.
Exactly.
Wow. So what do you think is the difference between people that have a bad story and the ones that make a choice to heal that story?
It's that word choice. It's all about somebody who says, I'm going to go to any lengths necessary to make this change in order to make this happen.
I got to fix this. This story isn't working anymore.
Yeah, well, also, I can't stand it anymore. This is too much for me. It's too painful. I've got to do something. That is the person who reaches out for help.
Yeah, they have to have a sense of urgency, like, I want to change.
Yes.
So if you're, there's this story about once upon a time, and a grandpa was with his grandson on the porch, on the rocking chair, and the dog was howling.
Mm.
And the grandson says to Grandpa, why is the dog howling? And Grandpa says, because he's in pain. And so the grandson says, well, why is he in pain? He goes, because he's laying on a nail. He says, well, why doesn't he move? He says, because it doesn't hurt enough yet.
That's it.
So if
That's good. It doesn't hurt enough.
a lot of
yet.
times it hurts, but it doesn't hurt enough for us to make a decision, that choice to take some action.
And when will enough be enough?
So look, Luke is the story healer. If you've got stories that aren't serving you, that are inhibiting your growth, you want to get past those stories and heal those stories. I want to encourage you to reach out to Luke. What's your website?
It's StoryHealingCoach.com.
Yeah, or your phone number?
Or my phone number is 562-618-3099. And
You have a story healing coach group on
Facebook. You can also look at my YouTube channel, which is just under my name, Luc Benoit. A lot of great videos on there too that show more about this work.
Well, I want to thank you, Luke. I think story healing is there. Why don't you just give a quick summary of why somebody should reach out and connect with you?
They should reach out and connect because it works. This is powerful. We're all carrying these stories. We have different levels of awareness about them, but changing them can make all the difference in creating that new future.
Luke's a wizard. Reach out. How do they call you? What's the number?
562-618-3099.
Thank you for your time. This is Joe Nicasio, Build a Better Business Coach podcast and EmployeeEscapePlan.com. Signing off. God bless you. Make it a great day.